Good afternoon, everyone. Let's start with grassroots democracy, Panchayati Raj, and municipal government. This topic belongs to section Indian Government and Politics of Paper 1 PSIR. So we have seen that democracy is often visualized as election, political campaign, and assembly, but such state capitals and parliamentary house are not the only picture of democracy. Democracy is when the decision making power reaches the smallest unit, that is village. And that is where grassroots democracy finds its most potent expression. So when we think about or talk about democracy, which means the rule of people. So rule of people means people have the decision making power. People have the power to make rules, power to make rules, power to govern themselves. The idea of self-governance, it is rooted in the definition of democracy. Now, in vast countries such as India, there are many variations that exist side by side. Some are rich, some are poor, some are educated, some are illiterate, some are from forward caste, some are from backward caste, some some live in cities, some live in villages, some are educationally good, some are educationally average. So all kinds of variation, all shades of opinion, they exist. And democracy will be meaningful only when power reaches to each and every member of these sections. So this is where grassroots democracy is taken into account. Now, before going on to the history of local self-governance in India, let's take a look at how these concepts, the concept of grassroots democracy, has taken an institutional form in present time. So, Panchayati Raj institutions and urban local bodies, both are the institutions of local governance, institution of grassroots democracy in India, and they are also known as third tier of governance. Now, the historical journey. First, during ancient India, the concept of self-governance, it was deeply rooted in societal structure. So, during the ancient time, villages were largely autonomous, means they were given independent power of ruling themselves. Now, the this ruling power or this governance, it was undertaken by panchayats. So panchayat is a Sanskrit word which means assembly of five. So usually during the ancient time, हर एक गांव के अंदर the council of elders existed. So council of elders means some elder people who everyone respected. The people who commanded respect and who could deliver justice in free and fair manner. So ऐसे ही चार पांच लोग जो हैं, पाँच दस, it was not, this numerical thing was not strict, 5 से 10 15 भी हो सकते थे, but such council of elder known as panchayat, it existed, and this played administrative and judicial function, manage resources, resolve disputes, and maintain social order within the villages. And we have found these references in the texts like Rig Veda, Arthashastra, etc. Now, key features of the ancient self-governance: first, autonomy, that villages were largely self-sufficient, and panchayats were making decisions on agriculture, resource management, and local justice. Judicial functions were also undertaken by panchayat when they acted as courts, resolved disputes that were based on customary laws, क्योंकि उस टाइम लाइव्स भी सिंपल थी, क्राइम भी सिंपल थे, तो जितने भी छोटे मोटे डिस्प्यूट्स थे, they could have been resolved by traditions and customs. Now, the third function accomplished by panchayats was social cohesion, that these institutions played a crucial role in maintaining social harmony, organizing festival, and upholding tradition. And we have an ancient inscription that talk about how local panchayat resolved a land dispute between two families by consulting community elders. Now, medieval period, centralization and decline of local autonomy. period in India saw the rise of centralized empire. So, this centralization of power impacted the autonomy of village panchayats. The administrative system shifted shifted towards centralized control and led to decline in influence and functionality of local self-governing institution, especially panchayat. Now, key changes during the medieval period. First, centralized administration. So empires like Delhi Sultanate or Mughal Empire, they established centralized governance structure that reduced the autonomy of village panchayats. Then they introduced many officials. So positions such as Mukaddam, village headman, Patwari, revenue collector, and Chaudhry, dispute resolver. These officials were introduced, then they were appointed by the central authority, thus diminishing the influence of local self-governance. The third change was erosion of traditional system. So when these foreign administrative practices were imposed, that it led to gradual erosion of indigenous self-governing institution. For example, in the region of Malwa, Madhya Pradesh, historical record indicate that appointment of a Patwari by the central authority led to a conflict with traditional panchayat. Now, shifting our gaze to colonial era, the shifting sands of local self-governance. So during colonial time, one thing changed. The way these institutions, the way villages were looked at. The colonial administrator, they viewed local bodies as primarily as a tool to maintain social order, maintain law and order, and support revenue collection. And paradoxically, this era also laid the groundwork for modern local self-governance structure. So आज जो पंचायत हैं उनका उनके जो historical basis है, it started from the seed sown by the colonial era. First, initial disruption undermining traditional panchayat. So when the British East India Company consolidated its power in 18th century after the Battle of Buxar, the traditional village panchayats and local bodies, they were neither understood nor respected. The British administrator were primarily concerning about maximizing revenue collection और वो उनकी जितने भी लैंड सेटलमेंट पॉलिसीज़ हैं रेवेन्यू सेटलमेंट पॉलिसीज़ जितने भी हैं दे वर कंसर्न अबाउट मैक्सिमाइजिंग रेवेन्यूज फिर उनके लिए लोकल स्ट्रक्चर है ट्रेडिशंस हैं कस्टम्स हैं दे डिड नॉट मैटर एट ऑल the example, the permanent settlement of 1793 that was introduced by Lord Cornwallis in Bengal, it further marginalized the traditional panchayat system by empowering jamindars to collect revenue. So earlier, traditional panchayats they held major sway in most of the matter, and the jamindars they usually they were owner of land and collected revenue on the behalf of kings. But right now, the British administrators, especially the officials of East India Company, they marginalized the traditional panchayat because traditional panchayat, in whichever form it existed by then, they did not play any role in revenue collection. So for East India Company, it did not matter. All they were concerned about was a point of contact that can collect the revenue and deliver to them on time. So this led to the power of Jamindar gradually increasing. Then the local custom, collective decision making, and dispute resolution system that existed during the ancient medieval time they faced erosion because the British they imposed their own judicial and revenue system. So their own introduction of British or English judicial and revenue system it replaced local elder and panchayat head with magistrate and revenue officers. Now, early colonial realization, the need for decentralized administration. By the mid 19th century, British administrators they began recognizing the difficulty of governing such a vast country. So अब उनको लगा है कि some some changes in local governance was necessary. So these observation, first such, the observation by Sir Charles Metcalfe, who is known as father of local self-government in India, and he famously described Indian villages as little republic. And according to his words, the village communities are little republics, having nearly everything they want within themselves and almost independent of any foreign relations. And this was quite true at the time, क्योंकि जब आए थे उस वक्त the cottage industry, the agriculture, and the judicial system, the three primary need or three primary factor to organize any society, all of them, they were uh, existing without any oversight. They were existing independently. So इसी वजह से मेटकाफ ने कहा कि इंडियन विलेजेस आर लिटिल रिपब्लिक. However, इस वक्त तक the British policy, it still prioritized administrative efficiency and revenue collection. Now, the second observation by Lord Mayo, his resolution in 1870, so it was the first formal step towards establishing local self-government, and its feature that he recognized the growing burden on central government to manage local affairs. And second, he proposed transferring certain responsibility like education, health, roads, and sanitation, all local affairs, to local bodies. And then he encourages provinces, provinces आज के टाइम में जो states हैं, to raise local resources through taxes. So same, it's like central government, it is asking the state government to provide funds to local government. Now its impact, so even though it was limited, this move was significant because it acknowledged that local problems, they require local solutions. Next came Lord Ripon's resolution, that is known as the Magna Carta of local self-government. So this was a truly defining moment for local self-governance, and the key highlights are that this resolution highlighted stress the need for a popular participation in local administration. Popular participation means local administration में वहीं के जो लोग हैं, local population, उनको involve किया जाए. Then he proposed that non-official members should outnumber officials in district boards and municipalities. So here, official means the British officials. So this resolution stressed that जितने भी डिस्ट्रिक्ट बोर्ड्स हैं, म्यूनिसिपैलिटीज़ हैं, जो जो लोकल इंस्टीट्यूशन, लोकल गवर्नमेंट के इंस्टीट्यूशन जितने भी हैं, जो ब्रिटिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी ने इस्टेब्लिश किए थे एंड देन ओवरटेकन बाय द ब्रिटिश क्राउन after the revolution of 1857, here he proposed that the official members, they should reduce, and instead their place would be taken by non-official members, means local population. So local or Indian. So this is another way of saying that he proposed that English officials should give way to Indian members. Then he advocated training the population in governance. So अगर Indians को allow किया जा रहा है, local population को allow किया जा रहा है, so this resolution also talk about that these population, these members, they should be trained in governance institution. Now the significance of this resolution that it planted a seed for democratic decentralization and laid the foundation of future self-governance structure. So after both these resolutions, 19th and 20th century, they witnessed establishment of many local bodies across British India. Municipalities, they began operating in cities and towns, responsible for sanitation, road, water supply. District boards for rural area, education, health, infrastructure. Both of them, they inducted many Indian members in the planning process. But then, most bodies were dominated by British officials, and financial power were also limited. So, example, by the early 20th century, cities like Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, they had functioning municipal corporation. Now, decentralization, commission, and legal frameworks. So over the year, many reports and commission, they tried to refine the issue of local self-governance. The first one, the Royal Commission on Decentralization, 1907, It recommended expanding local self-government and reducing central interference. Then the famous Montagu-Chelmsford reform of 1919, under the Government of India Act, local self-government, it became a transferred subject. That transferred means that Indian members, they can be allowed in its decision making. So it allowed Indian minister with limited authority over municipalities and local boards. And then another report, a Simon Commission report on 1928, it reviewed local government structure and underscored its importance. However, in reality, the British, they retained significant control over local institution. First, the taxation power, it was not given to Indian members. Second, the the public purse, it was held tightly. And third, induction of Indian members was happening at very low pace. The Indian members, they were not frequently inducted. Now, the financial challenge is the Achilles heel of local governance. So, Achilles heel, this means any vulnerable point, any major weakness. Now, this weakness for local self governance was the financial one. So, one persistent issue was the lack of financial autonomy. Local bodies, they depended heavily on grants from provincial government, and these governments, they were controlled by governors that were appointed by the British. So ultimately लोकल बॉडीज के पास पैसा जो है वो ब्रिटिश ने कंट्रोल करके रखा था. Second, the Indian Taxation Inquiry Committee, it highlighted this weakness, recommended a more robust system of local finance. So, again, from the Lord Mayo's resolution, everyone was talking about devolution of power to local self-government, devolution of finances. But the British, they did not want to play this card, because they feared that if village become more powerful, then they may rise up against them. Then the many municipalities, they struggle to raise revenue, and this struggle, it hampered their ability to deliver justice, क्योंकि बहुत सारी म्यूनसिपैलिटीज़ हैं उनको रेवेन्यू जनरेशन पावर दी गई थी. बट देन दिस द रेवेन्यू दैट वाज जनरेटेड, सम ऑफ इट, क्योंकि जो म्यूनसिपैलिटीज एंड डिस्ट्रिक्ट बोर्ड्स हैं उनमें ब्रिटिश ऑफिशियल तो थे ही है. सो मोस्ट ऑफ द रेवेन्यू, इट वाज cornered and coveted by British official, and it was channelized towards other purposes. And second, रेवेन्यू जनरेशन के लिए भी उनके पास कुछ अवेन्यूज़ नहीं थे, रेवेन्यू कहाँ से जनरेट करें. सो अगेन द सेम इशू, फाइनेंसेस नहीं है तो काम भी नहीं होगा. The legacy of the colonial era. So by 1947, India inherited a complex network of municipalities, district boards, and local bodies. Second, a tradition of limited public participation in local governance and a system that was heavily dependent on state patronage, lacking any true financial independence. So these were legacies of colonial era. So देखने में तो सब power limited लग रही है, but still the British, they left behind a framework, a skeletal, एक ढांचा, एक बिल्डिंग छोड़ के गए that became helpful later. जो हम मॉडर्न जो सिस्टम हम देख रहे हैं, गवर्नेंस सिस्टम, starting from the union government downward to the local government, the whole structure, it was taken in, the skeletal, it was borrowed from, it was facilitated by the colonial era. Now the critical insight, then many administrators like Lord Ripon, Mayo, they believed in grassroots democracy, but the political climate and imperial priorities of the British, they never allowed local bodies to flourish. And historian Vipin Chandra noted that local bodies in British India, they acted more as an instrument of imperial control than platform of people's empowerment. Now let's have a look at post-independence era institutionalizing Panchayati Raj and grassroots democracy. After independence, the concept of Gram Swaraj given by Mahatma Gandhi, it deeply influenced nation's imagination of democracy. Gandhi famously said, independence must begin at the bottom. Thus, every village will be a republic of panchayats having full power. So for Gandhi, democracy was meaningless if it did not empower the villages. But the new Indian leadership they faced a dilemma. So while Gandhi's vision was morally compelling, the practical challenges of nation building at the time, poverty, illiteracy, socioeconomic backwardness, and various separatist forces, violent activities, all of them they pushed leaders towards a centralized planning and control system. Now the constitutional provisions. So the Constitution of India, it did not grant constitutional status to Panchayati Raj initially, in the beginning, but recognized its importance. So directions were given to state via DPSPs under Article 14 that the state it shall take steps to organize village panchayats and endow them with such powers and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as a unit of self government. Means both the central government and state government. Here, the state means the union government. So, union government it has been directed to organize village panchayats or to provide institution of local government and to give them with required power, such as the functioning and financial power. But since this provision was placed in DPSPs and DPSPs are non-justiciable. Non-justiciable means if they are not implemented by the union government, then the aggrieved person cannot approach the court. It is different from part 3. Part 3 that belongs to fundamental rights. अगर fundamental rights का violation होता है, then or union government it does not address any issues that are related to fundamental rights, or the union government via any such institution via in its own volition try to violate your fundamental right, then you can approach the court. उसके लिए आर्टिकल 32 कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल रेमेडीज हैं. बट डीपीएसपीज जो हैं ये यूनियन गवर्नमेंट को डायरेक्टिव्स हैं कि अगर आने वाले टाइम में if the time permits, if they have the chances and if the situation permits, then they can implement these provisions. So ये नॉन जस्टिसिएबल है, इसलिए पंचायती राज institution they could not be implemented and remain largely at the mercy of state governments. Now the earliest efforts and experiments after independence. First one, the Community Development Program of 1952 and National Extension Service of 1953. So post-independence, India faced the colossal challenge of rural poverty and backwardness. So to address these issues, government launched Community Development Program as the first national attempt for planned rural development. So its focus was integrated rural upliftment via work in agriculture, education, health, and infrastructure. And soon, National Extension Service it was introduced, and by this extension, these facilities they were extended to every block. These development works they were extended to every block. The important aims here it was these services were introduced to promote self-help and participation and to develop agriculture, irrigation, education, healthcare, rural infrastructure, all in all, to develop the Indian economy that was based on the first plan. Limitations, the bureaucratic implementation dominated by officials that were limited in contact with the locals. So this was the first hurdle. Second, lack of democratic structure. So people could not and did not participate in it. And third one, benefits they were captured by rural elites. So most of the benefits of these services they were cornered by these rural elites. इनमें like the Brahmins, Nagar Seths, the rich jamindars, rich landlords, So these persons from some people from higher caste, upper caste, all of these rural elites, they accrued or they cornered all the benefits. And when the limitations were exposed, so need for a new elected grassroots institution were favored. The second such attempt was Balwantrai Mehta Committee in 1957. That was the first blueprint for democratic decentralization. So following the failure of Community Development Program and NES, the Balwantrai Committee was appointed to recommend how to create effective local governance. So this was the first serious government attempt to envision Panchayati Raj. Now, key recommendation of Balwantrai Mehta Committee. First, three-tier panchayat system that includes Gram Panchayat at village level, Panchayat Samiti at block level, Tehsil level, and Jila Parishad at district level. Then, Panchayat Samiti will act as a key executive body. And third recommendation, direct elections at the Gram Panchayat level. And next, transfer development planning and execution to PRI. So these were the recommendations. Now, limitation. First, state flexibility, it led to uneven implementation. So the states were given flexibility to pursue this model based on the local needs. But this flexibility, it, uh, it led to a tilted or twisted development structure and multitude of different models across India. Then the issue of financial dependence, that these institutions, they were not given any taxation power, so the question of finance were not handled. Then third, bureaucratic dominance and political interference. So these institutions, they mostly from Panchayat Samiti and Jila Parishad, both of them, they were dominated by bureaucrats. And Gram Sabha, first, it did not exist in a few states, and even if it did, it remained weak and symbolic. Now, the next attempt, Ashok Mehta Committee, 1977. So, by the 1970s, without any effective constitutional powers and without devolution of finances, panchayats remain dysfunctional. So, during 1977, the Janta government, it formed the Ashok Mehta Committee to revive local governance. Its recommendation, it replaced three-tier with strong two-tier system. First, Mandal Panchayat, that has a population of around 15,000 to 20,000, and Jila Parishad as the primary planning body. Next, political party participation in panchayat election for accountability. So this suggested that in the panchayat election, political party need to give in a ticket or need to enter the picture, because if they do, then they will remain accountable to the people. And third, next suggestion, next recommendation, taxation power to panchayat for financial strength, for transparency and accountability, social audit mechanism, and then it suggested granting constitutional status to PRIs. Now the limitation, Janta government collapsed. This report was self, and with some adaptation, it this recommendation was implemented in Karnataka and West Bengal, but it was not rolled out nationally. Then the next attempt, GVK Rao Committee. This committee was tasked with studying how to strengthen PRIs in rural development and poverty alleviation program. It recommended to make Jila Parishad the central authority for rural development and to integrate PRIs into poverty alleviation program that are they are undertaken at central level. Now, limitations, first, bureaucratic resistance, and second, the recommendation were largely ignored, maintaining the status quo. The next committee, LM Singhvi Committee, it was tasked on redefining local governance as a constitutional right. It recommended constitutional recognition of PRI to safeguard against political interference, then to strengthen the Gram Sabha as the cornerstone of village democracy. And the third recommendation was to encourage regular election and decentralized decision making. And the limitations of which are The recommendations were largely theoretical at that time, and these recommendations were not implemented immediately. The next attempt, the Rural Development Schemes era that started 1970s to 1980s. Here, because of dysfunctional PRIs, rural development it was pursued by a massive centrally sponsored scheme. So many schemes such as IRDP Integrated Rural Development Program, National Rural Employment Program, and Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, all these schemes they were undertaken so that even if PRIs are not properly functional, rural development should not be traced in back burners. Limitations. First, it was a bureaucratic top-down models that bypass BRIs. Second limitation was corruption, inefficiency, and elite capture. So, as you know, if funds are devolved from the central location, from the union parliament, then the time they reach the rural, the villages, most of the funds they were stole by the, the bureaucrats, the politicians, the local powerful members. So uh, you do not need to tell what corruption is. Elite capture. Elite capture means the elite people of village, elite people of town. They usually man these institutions. So all these program, rural development program, NREP and Jawahar Rozgar Yojana. So most of the benefits here they were cornered by the elites. So even if you are not a poor, but IRDP it was providing it. It was similar to Narega today. So if somebody is providing money free of cost, and you can adjust the account, you can adjust the muster roll by forming a nexus with the official, then it was what usually happened till you can say till we got a hint of digital monitoring. उससे पहले के टाइम तक this nexus it it was everyday affair. लोकल ऑफिशियल्स होते हैं, पॉलिटिशियंस होते हैं, ब्यूरोक्रेट्स होते हैं, वो मिलके फिर जो एक गांव के एलिट्स हैं, टाउन के एलिट्स हैं, वो सब मिलके आईआरडीपी में जितना भी फंड आया, लेट्स से उस टाइम पे 10 करोड़ फॉर एनी डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट, एक सड़क बनाने के लिए 10 करोड़ है, बस इन लोगों ने आपस में ही बांट लिया पैसा, सड़क की ज़रूरत ही नहीं है. सो ये इश्यूज थे. नाउ द नेक्स्ट, the 73rd Constitutional Amendment 1992. So after decades of inconsistent efforts, it became clear that without constitutional status and without financial powers, PRIs cannot remain functional. So under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, the 73rd Amendment was passed. Its provisions, three-tier PRIs were made mandatory, regular elections every 5 years by Independent State Election Commission, reservation of seats for SC, STs, and 33 for women, which were later extended to 50%, creation of State Finance Commission to ensure fiscal devolution. State Finance Commission जो है हर 5 साल में, जैसे यूनियन फाइनेंस कमीशन है, तो हर 5 साल में इट विल स्टडी कि 5 साल के अंदर इनकम एक्सपेंडिचर कैसे है, कैसे आया, कैसे एक्सपेंड हुआ, और कैसे what are the better ways to ensure proper financial devolution to local institutions. Then 29 functional subjects they were assigned to PRIs under 11th schedule of constitution, and Gram Sabhas were legally recognized as forum for participatory democracy. Now the limitations. Financial devolution it was weak. PRI still rely on grants. Second, bureaucratic control remains, that local plans जो हैं they were overridden by plans that are made at DPC, made at districts. ब्यूरोक्रेटिक ऑफिशियल्स सच एज SDM, DC, DM, उनके पास पावर होती है, तो फंड भी जो है वो लोकल पंचायत को रिलीज करने की जगह दे साइफन इट हियर एंड देयर. Then irregular and symbolic gram sabhas. And next limitation, many states still delay elections or dilute power. The next attempt, PISA, 1996. So PISA is Panchayat Extension to Scheduled Area, 1996. So it's nothing but to extend the provision of Panchayati Raj to fifth scheduled areas. Fifth and sixth scheduled areas are tribal areas. So it's similar to saying that to extend the provision of panchayat to tribal people, to scheduled tribes. So if you're not aware, in our constitution, the area where scheduled tribe lives, it has been divided into two parts. First, fifth schedule and sixth schedule. So the sixth schedule area, let's take a look at what scheduled areas are. ये समझ में आ जाएगा कि ये दोनों शेड्यूल्स भी समझ में आएंगे. तो शेड्यूल एरिया ये है कि इंडिया में हर एक स्टेट में जहाँ जहाँ भी ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन जो है वो कंसंट्रेटेड है, so those areas are declared as scheduled areas. So this declaration, it is done by president in consultation with governor. और इन शेड्यूल एरियाज पे जो लोकल या यूनियन गवर्नमेंट है, लोकल गवर्नमेंट हो गई, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट हो गई, किसी भी तरह की गवर्नमेंट जो है, इट डज नॉट हैव एनी इन्फ्लुएंस. Governor has a lot of influence. So the oversight, regulation, and monitoring power they have been given to the governor. Now, अब ये जो डिस्टिंक्शन है फिफ्थ एंड सिक्स शेड्यूल का, तो हर एक स्टेट के अंदर शेड्यूल एरियाज हैं. देन जो सिक्स शेड्यूल है, इट डील्स विद द शेड्यूल एरियाज ऑफ असम, मेघालय, त्रिपुरा एंड मिजोरम. नाउ ये है कि ये जो चार स्टेट हैं, ये दीज आर मोस्टली शेड्यूल. यहाँ पे ये जो शेड्यूल एरियाज जो हैं, ये है नहीं, पॉकेट्स नहीं है. यहाँ पे सारी जो पॉपुलेशन जो है, जो एथनिक ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन ही है. तो इस वजह से सिक्स शेड्यूल के अंदर दीज होमोजीनस, दीज कंप्लीटली शेड्यूल, कंप्लीटली ट्राइबल सेंट्रलाइज पॉपुलेशन जो है, उनको सिक्स शेड्यूल में रखा है. देन उसके अलावा इन चार स्टेट के अलावा बाकी जिस भी स्टेट में इफ देयर इज अ शेड्यूल एरिया, दोज विल बी गवर्न बाय फिफ्थ शेड्यूल. सो यू कैन से सिक्स शेड्यूल डील्स विद असम, मेघालय, त्रिपुरा, मिजोरम, एंड फिफ्थ शेड्यूल deals with tribal population of rest of India. Coming back to the topic, so PISA is the way Panchayati provisions were extended to fifth schedule areas. Now, core provisions were Gram Sabhas. In these areas, they were given control over natural resources, forest and land, and protection of tribal customs, tradition, and rights were ensured. And limitations: it was poorly implemented in most states. Then mining, land alienation, and displacement, they continued unchecked, unstopped, and gram sabhas, they remain weak. Now let's have a look at 74th Constitutional Amendment Act 1992. So again, this was an attempt to revitalize urban governance. So वो rural governance के लिए 73rd, 74th urban governance, which means towns and cities, because these are the places where people are most familiar with and people are most close with. Now, provisions of these amendment: first, three-tier municipal system, Nagar Panchayat for transition area that exist between rural and urban, or areas that are transitioning from rural to urban, mostly urban areas. ये टर्म आपने सुनी होगी. Then municipal council, it is for smaller urban areas, and municipal corporations for larger urban areas. So अभी 73rd and 74th का रिव्यू दे रहा हूँ मैं, एक ओवरव्यू दे रहा हूँ. देन इनके बाद इनको we'll talk about them in detail. Composition: that members are elected via direct elections, seats reserved for SC, ST, and women. Then fixed tenure of 5 year for municipalities. Elections to be conducted before expiry of term or within 6 months in case of dissolution. Election will be conducted by State Election Commission. Then 18 functions were devolved, listed under 12th schedule. Financial empowerment, that State Finance Commission would be constituted every 5 years to recommend distribution of financial resources between state and municipalities, and State Election Commission to ensure free and fair elections. Implementation and challenges, insights from CAG report. So, Comptroller and Auditor General, that is Auditor of Union Government, it highlighted several critical issues. First, incomplete devolution of function, that only while 17 out of 18 functions have been devolved in 18 states, but only 4 functions, such as regulation of slaughterhouses and vital statics, they have been transferred with complete autonomy. It means that out of 18 function, there are 14 functions that have not been devolved completely. Then key areas like urban planning and fire services, they remain under state control. Second, fiscal challenges, that ULB generate only 32% of their revenue internally via internal resources, and this shortcoming, it made them rely heavily on state and central government. Then a significant resource expenditure gap of 42%, it hampers the ability of ULBs to deliver essential services. So resource expenditure gap means income expenditure gap. That is, income is less, expenditure is more, and the margin difference between them, it is 42. Then human resource constraint, that there is average vacancy of 37%, that out of 100 sanctioned posts, 37 posts remain vacant in most of the ULBs. But in state like Madhya Pradesh and Telangana, these vacancies are notably affected. Next, electoral and representation issue, that only 5 states have provisions for direct election of mayors, and just 6 states have implemented 50% reservation agreement. Now, case study, successful ULBs, Kerala's decentralization model. So Kerala, it has devolved all 18 functions to ULBs. Then it has empowered ULB with financial resources and decision-making authority. And next, it has engaged in continuous training program for municipal staff and elected representative to enhance administrative efficiency. So that's why Kerala's ULB, they stand starkly as successful example of ULBs. Now in the next video, we will talk about both 73rd and 74th Amendment Act in detail. Thank you very much, and subscribe the channel.